Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now. He's Mr. Ahmed Maiyaki, and he's a public affairs analyst. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, let's get started. I guess you listened to my introduction. I
Yes.
try as much as possible to encapsulate. It's not all, but
Yes.
just a
The
few.
major highlight.
Yes. What's your understanding of this amendment?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, viewers. Well, from the background, you clearly highlighted what actually this amendment is about. Is the CBN Amendment Act 2007, seeking to carry out major amendments, about 24, different amendments to the act. Some addition, and then some were actually an addition to the existing act, establishing the CBN as an institution. While it is the right of the Senate committee as part of its oversight function, and of course the National Assembly, to review laws, and of course some of the sections or provisions of the act as proposed, seeks to entrench culture of compliance, and then also strengthen the corporate governance and reposition the CBN as an institution for higher performance. There are a few examples of some of the sections, provisions that are commendable. For instance, Section 20, subsection 5, that seeks to review the provision that punish the refusal to accept Naira as a legal tender. Reviewing it from a punishment of a fine of about 50,000 to 500,000. I think that's commendable, and that can even be more. Anybody coming to Nigeria to refuse that, put pressure on our own local currency. And again, the provision in Section 20, an additional subsection in that section that seeks to punish buying and selling of Naira at the official markup rate, also providing some punishment of about 500,000 for offenders, or 10% of the transactional value. These are very commendable sections or provisions in the amendment. But of course, there are very critical concerns in some of the provisions in the amendment that seeks to interfere with the independence of CBN as an autonomous institution. It is a global practice to allow apex banks of every country, to run independent of any interference. For instance, the current proposal that seeks to limit the tenure of the governor, the deputy governor, to a single tenure of one term, 6 years, seeks to, CBNs across the world are independently constituted to exceed, to be able to carry out functions over a long period for sustainability of the economy and then stability, of course. So when you seek to limit that tenure to just a single period of one, you usually have the medium, short, and long-term plans, monetary plans. So if you seek to limit that to a single term, that affects the process of that stability of the economy, as well as the sustainability plan of such, because whoever you bring in as a new CBN governor or management will come with a different design of policy that may also affect the processes that has been achieved, or the success stories. At least we're all witnesses to what is happening currently with the CBN. The Cardoso leadership, has been able to chart a course for Nigeria, and I think we're already seeing the outcome of some of the interventions. So now, if you now limit his tenure or that of his deputy governors to a single term of 6 years, he may not be able to roll out and implement some of these very clearly articulated policies, that seeks to bring Nigeria from what we were in recent past to the challenges of challenges of instability because you are changing the leadership. And then another provision like Section 12 of the Act that talks about appointing a coordinating committee for monetary and fiscal policy, having the Minister of Finance and other ministers as well as political appointees, serving as members of this committee, seeks to also erode the independence of the bank. Because for clear reasons, you need to have political interference by political players in the country, because that we may not want to witness cases like Zimbabwe, for instance, where the president, due to interference to the activities of the Apex Bank of Zimbabwe, has led to, for instance, if you want to get bread, you spend as much as ₦1,000,000 because the value of that currency has been eroded. So we need, for any functional economy, this is a global best practice, you need to have an independent bank running the affairs of the country, not bringing in people that may likely promote political interference, for instance, because some of these political actors that are seeks to be appointed into these committees are political players. Some of them own shares or have interest in commercial banks. So how do you now bring them on to also interfere in how these banks are run? So while it is clear, it is important that the committee or the National Assembly, in its attempt to strengthen the CBN, we shouldn't go into, excesses that will undermine the independence and also the ability of the bank to carry out its monetary functions.
Okay.
There are quite a number of sections, like the section saying we must subject the budget of the CBN to the National Assembly. That will cause a lot of delays that will affect the fiscal monetary policy of the bank, and in turn will affect the economy, and in turn also that also strengthens the foreign investors that are likely to come into Nigeria for investment, because the CBN or Apex banks across the world, according to best practice, are allowed to run independent of any political interference.
Okay, I've heard you. You said a lot of things, so let's dig further. You've talked about independence. Many analysts too that I've spoken to, and this, I must say that this conversation did not start today.
Yes.
It did not start today. Over the years, we've heard about the,
The
amendments, yes, and the CBN should be independent and all of that. What actually is the independence of the central bank? Because if you look at it, shouldn't the central bank be accountable? And I know why I'm asking. Shouldn't the central bank be accountable to the public, perhaps also through the parliament? And are we looking at the independence of the central bank through the instruments of the central bank? I hope you understand what I mean. In terms of policy making, putting up monetary policy rates and all of that. I hope you understand my question.
Sure.
So what exactly are we saying, talking about independence here?
Okay.
Independence not being accountable?
No.
Or independence as a result of the instrumentality of the tools that the central bank uses?
Well, talking about independence here, we are not clearly shielding the bank from being subjected to process of check. The Senate committee has a responsibility, and there are other different mechanisms, provided by law to checkmate this. For instance, the monetary policy process, is not being carried out single-handedly by the bank. Like the provision of the chief compliance officer that we talked about, are processes of checking the bank and ensure that the bank operates within limits of the provision of the law. And then, of course, over the past few 1.5 years, or about less than a year ago, the activities of the former leadership of the CBN, has questions and, brings more reason why we need to have processes of checkmating the excesses of the bank. That is allowed, CBN or any institution should be accountable to the people. And then, of course, the National Assembly is a representation of a people that should be able to carry out these functions. But the processes of bringing in political players or actors to be in the process. You know, like the federal financial regulation law provides for adequate checkmating and ensure the excesses of the CBN or the management is checked. But bringing in players like the minister and the rest who are actors, you know, seeks to threaten the microeconomic, policy of the bank, and it seeks to also interfere in the process. For instance, if you say you are taking the budget, like we see in recent times, we have had a lot of development, you know, having budget being passed within a year cycle, but that is not the case in the past. But what we are promoting is to ensure there is physical transparency, there is a clear process of accountability without necessarily subjecting the bank through these processes that hinders the operations. If you go across the world, we seek to emulate or want to emulate economics, best economies around the world. But we do not also want to toe the line of these processes that are being followed by these apex banks in this country to ensure that the bank is independent of this interference or any process. Like I said, the amendment in its entirety cannot be condemned because, like I have mentioned in the, at the beginning, you know, processes or provisions of that sections are section 20, subsection 5, and subsection 6, you know, that promotes the process of punishing people or not accepting the naira as an official tender, you know, must be promoted. But we must do this within the provision of international law and best practice so that we don't end up, you know, shooting ourselves in the foot, losing the very, very core mandate of the bank.
Are there other provisions that we need also to be concerned about, apart from the ones you've talked about? Are you perhaps against the appointment of a chief compliance officer? I did not get.
Well, the provisions in the Act seeks to demand that we have a chief compliance officer, for instance, in the position equivalent to that of a deputy
governor.
You know, deputy governor. That's quite okay, but then we need to also be very clear about that. He is only according to the provision.
What is he even going to be doing, actually?
He should be reporting to the board, this same board that we talked about, the ministers and the rest. His responsibility is to carry out those functions and report to the coordinating committee on fiscal policy, which will be chaired by the Minister of Finance and other ministers and other DGs of institutions within the economy, like the DMO, the budget office, and the rest of them. So the chief compliance officer clearly, as it is, the current CBN, you know, provides for that check. If he is being accountable, yeah, he should be accountable to other independent bodies, but without necessarily making him an independent officer that is carrying out function that contravenes or that, you know, seeks to come in conflict with the role and responsibilities of the governor of the bank.
So are there other areas that you are concerned about too?
Yeah, there are quite a number of other areas that the, you know, we need to also look at very clearly with the provision of that law. For instance, the provision in the Act, in the proposed amendment, clearly in section.
Because I also have it here.
Okay.
I'm looking at it.
I'm trying to get it, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe you need to.
Because
okay.
if you also take it, okay, let's go back to the issue of the tenor.
Okay.
Are you against the tenor of a single 6-year term?
That's what I mentioned.
Yeah. So you say we should keep
that
it
is
for 4 years. Yes, we should still keep it for 4 years. This
current provision is the standard, you know, tenure provision that allows the governor and deputy governors to carry out, because the minimum you have in a medium, short, and long-term plan in monetary policy requires that you do that beyond the period of 6 years. So if you allow them to operate in 6 single-year tenure, that is where we have instability in policy formulations. You have one policy being formulated and pursued by a leadership. For instance, what Cardoso is doing in the bank, you know, if you allow him to carry out beyond 6 years. That is where he's able to carry out the real, that is where we need to see the real impact of such provisions. But limiting it to 6 years, for instance, will not allow the bank or the management to be able to carry out this exhaustively in a manner that will impact the economy as we desire.
Because when I was taking a look at that tenor thing, the US came to my mind as well as the BOE, which is the Bank of England. The America has 4-year term,
yes,
but renewable.
Yes.
The Bank of England is a bit different. It's a single 8-year term.
Yes.
So
it's one thing and the same. If, for instance,
single 8-year term, I think the BOE governor started in 2020. Yes, his tenure will end in 2028.
If you ask me, my opinion is we should have the 4-year, that is renewable. Because within the 4 years, if there is any excesses, you can reappoint where you notice there is an excess in the current leadership.
The president can fire.
The president can
just
fire.
Like what we saw the last one.
Exactly. But when you put it to 8 years, one single year, 8 years, it becomes more difficult to check.
Can the president also fire?
No, yeah, he can.
Or even if it's 6 years, can the president also fire?
But it's important that with the 4-year renewable terms, it allows the government as well as the bank to carry out such plans that seeks to impact on our micro and macro economy as a nation. So like the example you've given, that of the United States and of course that of the UK. Our provision in Nigeria seeks to align that of the United States of America. And if you go over and over other countries, apart from America and the UK, most countries globally, the standard is you have 2-term renewable or you have a single term not less than 8 years. Yes.
Okay, let's go back to the issue of that committee again, because that is also very interesting. And I think it's section 12, if I'm not mistaken. You have it there.
Provision?
So, yes. Let's see. Yes, section 12.
Okay.
Let me read it for the benefit of our viewers. Okay, the committee shall consist, that's talking about the coordinating committee now.
Yeah, the 7-membership committee.
Yes, exactly. And let me read it out. The Minister of Finance shall be the chairman, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Governor of the bank, 2 external members of the board of the bank. I don't know who. Okay, let me go ahead. The Chief Economic Advisor to the President, the Director General of SEC, the Director General of Debt Management Office. And of course, the objectives of the committee will be to set consistent targets of monetary and fiscal policies that are conducive to controlling inflation and promoting financial conditions. Then limit any fiscal deficit to a level that can be financed without having recourse to direct monetary financing from the bank. That's talking about ways and means. The provisions of the second schedule of this. Okay. So if we take a look at this, what also came to my mind when I saw this was the Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee. I know that I think the governor of the bank should know this, and some heads of other regulatory authorities, yes, in the financial space. The Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee, the FSRCC, which is an interagency body set up to deal with matters of common interest and concern to the various regulatory and supervisory authorities in the financial industry. They do that. I guess that committee still
exactly.
existed in terms of,
And that seeks to operate independent of the CBN.
Yes.
That is completely...
The governor of the bank is there, SEC, DG,
all
NDIC.
the economic players in the financial sector are key members in that committee that already is in existence. Now, if you now go to include a committee on monetary and fiscal policy chaired by the members you have listed, the ministers and as well as DGs of other agencies, as well as the economic advisor, that seeks to, if you allow the committee, that standing committee to determine rates of interest for banks, that comes into conflict with
the role of the CBN.
The operational autonomy of the bank,
the CBN.
Is actually affected. And then
banks.
It also breeds conflict of interest. Like I said, some of these members of this committee to be chaired by the minister and dominated by fiscal actors like the ministers, are also interested parties within the Nigerian setup, the commercial banks and other sectors. So there must be that separation between what the bank does and that political interference by such committee when established. Already we have existing mechanism like the one you have listed with clear and adequate representation by various players in the economy to checkmate and play the same role that the fiscal committee that is being sought to be provided in the Amendment Act, are playing. That is a clear contravention. That is a clear interference of the existing laws and policies of a country like Nigeria.
Now, let's go on another side, still with this committee. If we take a look at it from the other side, don't you think it would also engender this coordination we're talking about? Because over the years, we've talked about coordination of monetary and fiscal policy that we've not seen them align. Ministry of Finance will be doing its own on one side. CBN will be doing its own on another side. Even now that we're saying CBN is controlling inflation, of course, raising rates and all of that. CBN has said it would like to see inflation at about 21% by the end of this year.
Yes.
I think that's also the target of the fiscal authorities. If they meet it, that's another ball game. But doesn't this committee also put that argument forward that this could be for coordination?
Well, the
I hope you understand
yes,
what I'm
I understand.
saying.
The minister of finance or the minister of finance can actually carry out this role in harmony with the bank without necessarily establishing a committee to carry out functions that seeks to erode on the independence of the bank. Yes, you can have the CBN working very closely with the Minister of Finance or the entire Ministry of Finance to ensure there is consistency in our policy formulation and implementation, because we cannot operate at crossroads. While the bank is doing one thing, the CBN is doing the other part. But clearly, the law establishing CBN has really given it that powers to carry out, decisions that seeks to control inflation rate, set targets, monetary policies that ensure consistency in decision. But I will agree that we should have, a process where the bank is working in line with what the Ministry of Finance is working to ensure that there is consistency in that plan and implementation. But what the provision is saying is we are bringing the Minister of Finance into the functions of the bank, which of course is threatening the independence of the bank, the autonomous role of the bank. The bank may not be able, or certainly will not be able, to carry out those functions that strengthen the economy, that set standards, or targets for inflation control, and other decisions that affect the micro and macro, impact to our current economy.
You know what I'm thinking about as we're discussing this? I said in the last administration of the central bank, it was accused, and the former central bank governor is facing
current investigations.
Yes, investigation is in court currently for that. The former central bank leadership was accused of meddling into fiscal policy. Now, with the amendment of this, you are going to see the Minister of Finance doing
even worse, because because
performing monetary or somehow,
what we should be
so
doing.
it's like the other way around.
Like
now,
I said, in some of the provisions, where the management of the bank, like the governor and deputy governors, are restricted in participating in any other mandate other than the mandate of the bank. Participating in political activities, that is very positive. Because I do not want to, in as much as I do not want to go into the current issue of the former leadership of the bank, because it's currently in court, but I must say that we will be replicating even more dangerous trend if we are already crying about the MFLA-led management, and we're bringing in the Minister of Finance to carry out these functions that seeks to interfere with the...
And not concentrating on his core
fiscal thing. The fiscal responsibility as the Minister and coordinating minister of the economy. But that can be jointly carried out, in harmony with that clear provision.
Okay, I think we have to go now, but I need to put this also forward. The MPC itself, the Monetary Policy Committee, is a committee that is constituted of the governor, the deputy governor, external members, and even the Ministry of Finance representative, the permanent secretary
on the committee.
On that committee.
Exactly.
And that's, anyway.
And then of course the board members.
Yes.
Oh, well, I wish we would have more time.
Yes.
But the essence of this is, as a nation, while we review our laws, we must be very aware that, certain provisions of the law should not be interfered so that we have independence of the CBN.
I think the major thing really is about political interference. And I just think, and I will say it as vocal as possible, we don't want to say a central bank that is political.
Exactly.
Please, make una no go there. I beg. There are things that are sacrosanct. Politics should not. We are even suffering as we have it already, then let alone worsening it. But the public hearing would still hold, and people like us will continue to follow that. Thank you very much for coming on the program. We are not jettisoning the baby with the bathwater. There are a lot of good things.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Ahmed Maiyaki, a public affairs analyst, and we've got to go now because we have a live event coming up, I think, here in Abuja. I will see you all again. Be the best you can be and be the change you want to see by now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content. Bye.